Meanwhile, in Kavik, Alaska, Sue stands on her rooftop, donning a new fox hat, scanning the campsite as usual. Now that the tourists have all departed, she's the only one left. Predators like brown bears, wolves, and wolverines often roam near the camp, so she must remain extremely vigilant. After surveying the area, she spots no predators but does see a group of ptarmigans. Sue immediately takes her small red vehicle, planning to hunt a few for dinner. She remarks that ptarmigans might be the world's silliest birds, yet they always manage to escape from her. She can't figure out why. As she gets close enough, Sue loads her shotgun. Her first shot misses, but the second hits one. As she moves closer, the flock of ptarmigans takes flight, leaving her unsure which one to target next. Only the one she hit remains on the ground, flapping its wings. Although it's just one bird, it's better than none, and she's happy to pick it up and place it in her cart. Usually, where there's a group of ptarmigans, other predators are also drawn to the area. While patrolling along a dry riverbed, Sue discovers a piece of hide, likely shed by a reindeer, and some vertebrae nearby, probably remnants of a bear's meal. She then moves to another riverbed, where mud tracks confirm her suspicions. Although winter is setting in, the brown bears won't hibernate for another week or two. The distance to the camp is a few hundred meters, generally safe enough for her to head back for dinner. Back at the camp, Sue decides to make Chinese dumplings with the ptarmigan. She starts by chopping some garlic and then slicing the breast meat, ensuring it's boneless for the dumpling filling. Although her shooting might be off, her culinary skills are quite refined. She dices the boneless meat, wraps it in dumpling dough, and fries them in a cast iron skillet. Minutes later, a delicious aroma signals that the fried dumplings are ready. A few days later, Kavik experiences its first heavy snowfall of the year, with no sign of the blizzard stopping. Sue prepares for the harsh weather, knowing visibility will be nearly zero. To navigate the camp, she relies on guide ropes she has strung between the equipment room, the restaurant, and her residence, essential for preventing herself from getting lost in the blinding conditions. After securing the ropes outside, she plans to convert the restaurant into a winter dwelling to accommodate any unexpected visitors, also taking the opportunity to upgrade the flooring. The heating costs for the living quarters and restaurant usually amount to $57,000 annually. Insulating the floors could save a few $1,000s. After clearing out the items, Sue lays down insulation across every corner of the floor, covers it with plywood, and secures everything with screws. To ensure the floor's durability and resistance to pests, she applies a layer of paint. Sue invests considerable effort in upgrading the floor to enhance the room's warmth. After painting, the project is only half done. She retrieves several rolls of carpet from the warehouse, initially planning only to lay bubble wrap and plywood. Later, thinking she might as well, she decides to paint and lay an old carpet, then finds it unsightly and tops it with a new carpet. Once carpeting is complete, she moves the previous items back in, transforming the restaurant into a cozy winter lodge. Visitor numbers are low in winter in Kavik, so Sue prepares just 3 beds. Guests can enjoy a 24-hour fireplace and the beautiful northern lights, ensuring they feel satisfied and comfortable, a testament to Sue's commitment to service and her investment in the future. Her unique small 8-wheeled vehicle needs to be fitted with tracks for winter. Without them, no matter how powerful, it can't navigate through the thick snow. Sue drives the vehicle onto the spread-out tracks, but when she tries to fit them, she finds they won't attach. After some investigation, she discovers the tires are overinflated. She deflates each tire, tightens the tracks, and finally hammers in the bolts. The first track is on, and the second one fits much more quickly with her newfound knowledge. Once the tracks are fitted, she tests the vehicle outdoors and sets up several trail cameras to monitor for predators near the camp. These cameras activate upon detecting motion. She places the first camera opposite the incinerator oven. Though all trash is burned, small animals still visit. The second camera goes by the frozen stream, a highway for animals. The third is positioned where she often sees wolverine tracks, providing 24-hour monitoring of the area with night vision capabilities. A few days later, Sue checks the cameras. The one near the incinerator has captured 23 clips, which she'll need to connect to a computer to view. Back at the camp, she inserts the memory card into her computer. The first clip shows a fox playing with a snowball in front of the camera, while another camera has captured numerous well-camouflaged ptarmigans, sometimes just meters away without being noticeable. The next day, Sue prepared to make a cup of coffee to wake herself up, but discovered many floating particles in the water. She immediately checked the storage barrel and found it swarming with living organisms. Drinking this could lead to a parasitic infection, potentially life-threatening. Despite the scarcity of liquid water in winter, she had no choice but to discard it. She pumped the contaminated water out onto the open ground, noting the barrel's greenish hue due to organic life forms. Sue then cleaned the barrel with soapy water and bleach, suspecting that the river water had been contaminated by microorganisms after recent rains. Now, with no water left for the winter, Sue took advantage of early winter to replenish her supply. She drove her small 8-wheeled vehicle along the river for a kilometer to a spot with flowing water, which was cleaner than before. Sue's daily minimum water requirement is 4 liters, and for the 8-month winter, she needed at least 1,000 liters stored. Take her about 6 trips to fill 12 barrels. Surviving in the wilderness means even seemingly minor tasks can be time-consuming. After storing enough water, Sue planned to create a hot water system to ensure she had access to hot water 24/7. She placed an iron barrel over the fireplace and wrapped a copper coil around the chimney pipe. Heating water with propane all winter would cost about $6,000, so using the chimney's heat to warm the water would save a significant amount. She repositioned the output end of the copper pipe back over the barrel, theorizing that water would flow down, turn into steam as it heated, and condense back into the barrel, heating up the entire barrel of water. However, theory needed to be tested in practice. The next day, Sue brought a wash basin and hooked up an unused water pump to automate the hot water supply. She first washed her hair with the hot water, then used the remainder to wash her socks. Having access to hot water all day in sub-zero temperatures certainly elevated her standard of living. Sue took out a reindeer hide she had borrowed from a reindeer last summer. Unfortunately, the hide was damaged by fly maggots and couldn't be used to make a coat, but she had another use for it. Sue planned to make a traditional sling, a weapon once used by Native Americans and Inuit to hunt reindeer. To turn the hide into usable leather strips, she first had to remove the fur. She added lime to the water to alter its pH level and expand the pores of the hide, soaking the entire reindeer skin for several hours. During this time, Sue collected stones outdoors for the sling. They needed to be neither too large nor too small, and similarly weighted on each end. Stones were plentiful in the wilderness. After the hide had soaked, removing the fur was the most time-consuming part. Sue used a draw knife against the grain of the fur. Time was something she had plenty of in winter, and she enjoyed keeping busy. After 2 hours, she off all the fur. Next, she cut the hide into strips and wove them into sturdy leather cords, attaching a stone at each end to complete the primitive sling. Sue tested the sling on her head and felt quite satisfied with it. Mastering this ancient tool would require practice. She used a traffic cone as a target, spinning the sling overhead and releasing it. Missing was part of the learning process, and it took many attempts before she hit the target. Then Sue switched to a smaller target, a teddy bear. Native people learned this skill from childhood and could hit targets from tens of meters away. After countless tries, Sue finally hit the target once. Now she needed to test it on real prey. Driving her small 8-wheeled vehicle, she searched for ptarmigans and actually found a group. Quietly approaching with the sling, the birds looked at her but didn't fly away. She spun her new weapon and threw it forcefully, but unsurprisingly, it didn't knock a single feather off. The ptarmigans were undisturbed by the shotgun, let alone a primitive sling. They flew off and then landed right in front of Sue again, completely unharmed. After 4 or 5 attempts, she decided to stop. Mastery of this hunting method wasn't going to happen overnight, and the missed ptarmigans were not just 1 or 2. The next day, a plane flew over the Kavik campsite. As she aged, Sue purchased a cabin to enjoy her retirement because both the location and the price were right. She bought it after just 1 viewing. Today, she planned to thoroughly inspect the cabin's condition. Getting there required a flight, followed by a drive. Although Sue is currently the sole caretaker of the Kavik camp, she does not own the land. If the government decides to reclaim it, she must comply unconditionally, making way for oil extraction and local indigenous projects. She arrived at her destination only after nightfall and immediately got stuck in the snow just off the main road. Even with all-wheel drive, the vehicle struggled, forcing Sue to shovel the snow and then reverse the car out of the drift. Unfortunately, she scraped the front bumper of the borrowed vehicle. Luckily, the cabin was not far from the main road. After parking, Sue used a sled to haul her luggage to the cabin. The first thing she did inside was to light the fireplace. The cabin seemed to be in good overall condition. The next day, Sue planned to explore the surroundings. The cabin is 90 kilometers from Fairbanks and 810 kilometers from Kavik. If all goes as expected, this place will be Sue's retirement home. Besides the main house, there is also a picnic area and facilities for livestock. The house was built in August 1951, and its condition is quite impressive considering the decades that have passed. After a full inspection, Sue found no major issues but noted some minor repairs needed. She listed these on paper. They were small issues and not urgent, as she was not planning to move in immediately. For now, the cabin is just an addition to her lifestyle. At 55, Sue acknowledges that her physical condition is declining. While this cabin might not end up being her final home, it certainly won't be the Kavik campsite. Sue was organizing ammunition early in the morning. She had been here for a few days without having eaten any fresh protein. Today, she wanted to go nearby to see if she could hunt some rabbits for a fresh meal. Around the Kavik campsite, rabbits were not visible, so she naturally hadn't had the chance to eat them. However, just 100 meters from the cabin, she noticed many rabbit droppings, suggesting a significant rabbit population, and even saw many fresh tracks. Sue found a bush that had been gnawed on and decided to set a few snares there. She took out a piece of wire to make them. One end of the snare was fixed to a nearby tree, and the other end was placed on a path frequented by rabbits. She set up two in the same location, hoping to catch some rabbits on her next visit. On her way back, she saw two moose. Observing the moose appearing in pairs, she felt that this property was indeed lucky, surrounded by a variety of wildlife. However, even during hunting season, these moose, a mother and child, were not allowed to be hunted, and it wasn't even moose hunting season yet. The next morning, Sue returned to the bush area. She had never seen so many rabbit tracks in her life, and was hopeful about the two traps she had set. However, reality taught her a harsh lesson. Rabbits had passed through the snares without triggering them. Both traps were untouched. Sue had chosen a good location, but the wire was not smooth enough, preventing her from catching any game. Although she didn't catch any rabbits, she heard other animal sounds and then spotted a squirrel hopping under a tree. Seeing the squirrel as a walking source of protein, she couldn't miss it. Sue cautiously aimed and shot the squirrel as it climbed a tree, taking it down with a single shot. She had missed grouse before, but she hit the small squirrel with one shot. Another squirrel's noise prompted her to hunt another one, which would be just enough. Sue saw it jumping between two trees, aimed, and shot it down, too. Sue picked up her catch, which was at least several meters up in the trees. She managed to hit two squirrels with two shots. She then returned home to enjoy her meal. Using a knife, she cut open the squirrels, discarding the innards and fur. Despite their size, the squirrels had excellent meat quality. Originally wanting to eat rabbit, she ended up cooking two squirrels instead, which turned out delicious. Having seen so many rabbit tracks and two moose recently, Sue was looking forward to the autumn hunting season. If lucky, she might even get to eat moose. Gradually, Sue was falling in love with her newly purchased property. Covering herself with just an air conditioner quilt in sub-zero temperatures, it's no wonder Sue felt cold when she got up in the morning. Therefore, she decided to find some wood and make a bed to insulate herself from the cold ground. Buying a house in Alaska came with the bonus of having several acres of forest around it. For the bed, she could simply chop nearby wood. Spruce trees, being large and heavy, were not her first choice. Medium-sized birch trees, which had been dried by a previous forest fire, were perfect. Sue started by marking the trees she planned to chop with a rope, avoiding the straight ones and opting for the crooked ones, a choice whose purpose would only be apparent with the finished product. Unlike the Kavik campsite, which she only rented, this land was truly hers, including its plants and animals. Using trees from her own land, she aimed to build an unconventional large bed. After selecting the appropriate materials, the next step was to fell them and bring them home. The birch trees Sue chose were not large, with diameters around 10 centimeters, and whether they could support her weight was questionable. After felling, the wood needed to be thawed, likely because carrying larger trees was too difficult for her alone. Once thawed overnight, construction could begin. Sue preserved the branches on the trunks intentionally. She drilled holes in the thicker trunks and used thumb-sized wooden pegs to connect the pieces of wood, applying wood glue for additional strength. The thicker logs served as the posts, and the smaller ones as the beams. After assembly, she used ropes to tighten and secure everything. Aside from the rough surface of the wood, there were no issues, and soon the basic frame of the headboard was completed. The branches on the trunks were kept for decorative purposes. The same method was used for both the head and foot of the bed, maintaining the timber structure's decor. The middle beams were connected using wooden pegs as well. With the frame planned in advance, assembly was relatively quick and took just one day. Sue's handmade bed looked rough, but she liked this style, appreciating its raw, natural feel. Omitting even a single branch would be a disrespect to art. Finally, she placed a mattress on it, completing the bed. She also carved holes in the two posts at the head of the bed and embedded two coins, believed to be lucky charms to ensure a good night's sleep and sweet dreams. This bed might not mean much to others, but for Sue, It held significant meaning as the first piece of furniture she made for her new home. Sue tested the bed. It was a bit shaky but sturdy enough for her to sleep on alone. Sue fired her gun, and the sight of feathers scattering in the air confirmed a grouse had met its end. After picking up her prey, she took a moment to gratefully acknowledge its sacrifice before happily continuing her journey on her snowmobile. A few hundred meters later, she spotted another group of grouse in the woods. She had nearly missed them due to speeding, so she quickly got off her snowmobile and grabbed her shotgun. However, this time, her shot missed. The forest was full of obstacles, and it was likely her shot hit a tree instead. As the day grew darker, it was time for Sue to head home. Back at the house, she started preparing dinner. The grouse offered limited meat, which she decided to use for a grouse pasta dish. The meat was tender and rich in hemoglobin, providing a nutritious and tasty meal. In addition to the pasta, Sue fetched some scallions and carrots from the outdoor fridge, stir-frying the vegetables first to thaw them before adding the fresh grouse meat. After tossing in a few noodles, the dish was ready after some cooking. Not every hunting trip was successful, but at least today, Sue enjoyed her grouse pasta along with a truly comforting lifestyle. She was growing more fond of her backyard, staying longer than she had planned. Despite her love for the place, it was time to return to Kavik campsite. Before leaving, Sue needed to clear the snow off the roof, which was about half a meter thick. More snow could risk collapsing the roof. To prevent falling, she tied a safety rope around herself. Even though she was secured, the slightest movement frightened her, as the structure had no central support, and the combination of the snow and her weight was substantial. Fortunately, she managed to clear the snow without any incidents. The main house's roof was harder to clear due to its sloped design. The best place to secure the safety rope was on the opposite side. Sue tried several times to throw the rope over the roof, and finally succeeded after removing her cumbersome gloves. Though the process was tedious, safety in high-altitude work was paramount. The rope was secured to a large tree, ensuring Sue's safety. Once everything was secured, she confidently cleared the snow from the main house's roof. Cleaning the snow off 4 or 5 roofs was exhausting, but there was no alternative. She had to finish before the weather changed, which could delay her return to Kavik. After clearing the snow, Sue began packing her bags. A briefcase, a suitcase, and a monkey cap comprised her luggage. When she found the time later, she planned to return and stay for a while longer. Early in the morning, Sue took her shotgun and headed out because she had spotted a group of grouse near the camp. After sneaking up on them, she fired her shotgun, which scared the rest of the grouse away. Having lived in Fairbanks for a few weeks, her shooting skills had improved. Sometimes, hitting the prey doesn't mean it's easy to retrieve, especially through half a meter of snow. Sue trudged through the snow, struggling to pick up her hit prey. In the winter at Kavik, the chance to eat fresh protein mainly came from these grouse, for which Sue was thankful. She reloaded her shotgun and took aim at another grouse 5 meters away, hitting it effortlessly. One grouse was barely enough, but 2 made for a good meal. This was probably the happiest moment for Sue that morning. Before it froze, she plucked it. This time, she was not wasteful. The edible parts were all collected in a bucket. Such hemoglobin, rich grouse meat wasn't even available in supermarkets. Sue decided not to eat both birds at once, since it's not every day you get such a treat. After returning to the camp, she started preparing dinner. Sue had just returned to Kavik the day before, and everything since then had gone surprisingly smoothly. Her winter flight arrived on time. The camp hadn't been damaged by blizzards. The generator started on the first try, and even the grouse, which she usually missed, were hit today. She felt a youthful vigor returning. The next day, while Sue was checking the camp's infrastructure, the weather seemed fine, but the forecast predicted a blizzard in a few hours. The camp already had snow 4 to 5 meters high, and more was continuously falling. She hadn't yet tied the safety rope when the blizzard struck. Braving the storm, Sue quickly grabbed the guide rope, expecting the blizzard to last a week. To minimize outings, she prepared food in advance. Sue probably walked about 10 meters in the strong wind, her face covered with frost. Fortunately, she made it to the food storage room, where she took out some previously stored bear and deer meat along with some packets of vegetables. This basket of food should help her last until the storm passed. Now, she had to return the same way with the food. The storm had intensified, reducing visibility. In such conditions, It was best not to open your eyes too wide as the wind-blown ice could hit your eyes. Staying in a warm room was the best strategy. Hours later, the blizzard weakened slightly. Sue took the chance to check the generator in the equipment room. The snow had piled up faster than expected, now higher than the food storage room. This rapid accumulation highlighted the severity of the winter here. Upon reaching the equipment room, Sue noticed the generator sounded off. At the back door, she discovered the exhaust pipe was buried under snow. She had to shovel the snow away, estimating that she would need to clear it periodically to keep the generator running. If it went off, restarting it would be difficult. And without electricity, the heating pump wouldn't work. Without heating, she couldn't survive a day here. The generator's heat froze instantly upon exiting, requiring continual clearing to keep the equipment running. By the next day, the storm had calmed, and the camp was covered with thick snow. Sue prioritized clearing snow from around the generator's exhaust. The entire camp's equipment could be shut down, but not the generator and heater. Although this lifestyle was tough, Sue enjoyed it. Sue loaded a bullet into her shotgun and pulled the trigger on a grouse a few meters away. It's said that this bird is the dumbest in the world, and it proved true as it stood still, making an easy target. After collecting her prey, Sue continued driving her small red vehicle. Along the way, she spotted more birds by the roadside and seized the opportunity to stock up on food, successfully taking down another grouse. Lately, she had rarely returned empty-handed from a hunt, often bringing back several birds each time. Today, Sue wasn't specifically out to hunt grouse, but to inspect the surroundings of the camp. It was early spring, a time when many animals, including brown bears, leave their dens, making it essential to patrol the area. She walked along the river for a few hundred meters and spotted a group of reindeer. Early spring is a no-hunting period, so Sue could only watch as they moved further away. Where there are herbivores, there are usually predators too. Moving forward, she found a cave with tracks at the entrance, indicating it was still in use. Sue also noticed grouse tracks on the ground. The entrance had fox droppings as well as signs of wolves and wolverines, suggesting it might be a fox den that had been overtaken by other predators. No wonder there were fewer foxes near the camp since the snow melted this year. When Sue tried to go further, her snowmobile was blocked by snow. She shifted to low gear, but the tracks just spun in place. The saying goes, "Don't turn back until you hit the wall." But when Sue hits a wall, she breaks it down. She returned with a small bulldozer, and in a few minutes, a path was cleared. With the camp opening to visitors in a few days, including many who would bring children for camping, she needed to ensure there were no predators nearby. As the only manager of the camp, Sue had to ensure the safety and a good experience for the visitors. Many visitors cook their own food, and the camp's restaurant had been around for over 20 years, with rotten wood and aging walls being common issues. Sue planned to replace the kitchen furniture. She could still use the old sinks, but they had to be moved out to speed up the demolition. The rotten wood was of no use and was disposed of quickly. Sue hadn't had enough of swinging her hammer. Almost everything smashable in the kitchen was demolished, including the floor. Now, she had to bring in and install new cabinets. Installing the overhead cabinets wasn't too heavy, but was tricky for one person. She had to use storage boxes and planks for support while securing them. After the cabinets were fixed, she placed the countertop boards on top and cut out the dimensions for the sink. In this place, there were no carpenters, masons, or electricians. Sue had to do everything herself. This renovation project turned out to be much harder than she anticipated. However, after spending dozens of hours, she completely transformed the old 1,968 kitchen. Everything was ready, and the camp could open at any time. As the snow melted, the runway at Kavik campsite turned into a vast pool of water. Sue stood right at its center, where the water depth had reached 30 centimeters. The flowing water was washing away fine stones and quicksand from the runway, causing severe subsidence. An airplane carrying tourists and equipment was scheduled to arrive in 3 days, giving Sue just 2 days to repair the runway. Otherwise, the plane wouldn't be able to land, and there would be no income. The only machinery available for the repair was a 966 model loader, which was used for clearing snow in the winter and now for rapid runway repairs in the summer. Sue started by shoveling some excess gravel and piling it at the drainage points of the runway. Only by diverting the water flow could she proceed with further repairs. After several hours of hard work, The runway had significantly improved. The area that had been a vast sea was now only minimally seeping water. Now, she needed to start the second phase, leveling the surface. A large metal plate, custom-sized for the loader, was crucial for flattening the runway. Dragging it back and forth with the loader would evenly spread excess gravel and fill in the depressions. However, long-term use had caused the two iron pipes on top to loosen. They needed to be welded before use to prevent them from falling off during the job. While welding wasn't Sue's forte, luckily, the welding equipment didn't require high skill levels. Once the machine was on, she just had to aim at the spot and start welding. The main thing was to ensure the welds were strong. Once done, Sue drove the loader. This machine was essential for transporting heavy items around the camp. She also needed to bring two drag plates, large and small, to the runway. The strong winds today would help dry the runway quickly. She just needed to attach the drag plates to the back of the loader and run it back and forth. The back plate would lift excess stones and fill them into lower areas, showing high work efficiency. Aircraft that typically land at Kavik are bush planes or helicopters, all capable of wilderness landings. Occasionally, large cargo planes transporting supplies also arrive, but their requirements for runway conditions are minimal. As long as the terrain is level without protruding rocks, it's sufficient. After several hours, most of the runway was leveled. Some areas previously underwater still had minor puddling, but it was no longer severe. Ensuring the plane could land safely was Sue's goal. Only by guaranteeing the safe arrival of tourists could she bring business to Kavik. Otherwise, no matter how well the campsite was upgraded or transformed, it would be meaningless without ensuring safety. A gray wolf was steadily approaching Sue's campsite. Since the start of spring, she noticed a sharp decline in her fox friends, many of whom had been preyed upon by this wolf. This was part of the food chain, and she generally did not interfere. Moreover, an overpopulation of foxes could lead to outbreaks of rabies. What Sue found intolerable was that this wolf was lingering near her campsite. A few years ago, a brown bear did the same, and was eventually dispatched by Sue with 2 shots. Any threat to tourists was eliminated before it could escalate. Sue got into her small red vehicle, prepared to intercept the wolf. The prey was about 800 meters away. The wolf seemed to notice her approach and maintained its distance. Unable to close the gap, Sue stopped the car, made some noises to attract it, and loaded her weapon. The chance of hitting it from this distance was slim, but she had to fire regardless to mark her territory if nothing else. The wolf fled wildly at the sound of the gunshot. Realizing the chase was hopeless, Sue used her binoculars and discovered the wolf was hunting reindeer. Dealing with the wolf could wait. She shifted her focus to the reindeer, especially since they had begun their southern migration and represented a valuable source of meat for the winter. Sue drove another 2 kilometers in her small red vehicle. 2 reindeer were visible, at least 3 kilometers away. Approaching them silently was necessary, which could take about 10 minutes in late winter but was more challenging in summer due to the wet tundra. Choosing the wrong path could mean getting stuck in mud, complicating hunting. Sue tried to stick to higher ground, but her vehicle still got stuck occasionally. Moving forward, the water only got deeper, and she dared not proceed lest she be unable to extricate herself. She quickly retreated from the area and chose another route toward the reindeer. Soon, a river appeared before her. Normally, it was easy to cross when the water was low, but it looked difficult at the current level. Sue hoped the prey would cross the river and come closer. The next day, she stood on the roof searching for game. It seemed her prayers were answered, as the reindeer she couldn't approach yesterday suddenly appeared nearby. Judging by its size, it was likely a mature male. Sue immediately grabbed her weapon, ready to hunt. In previous years, thousands of reindeer passed near the camp during migration. However, they changed their migration route every 5 or 6 years, and recently, the reindeer population had been declining, likely due to a shift in their traditional path. Sue drove a little further, and a small group of reindeer crossed in front of her vehicle. She began selecting her target. The 2 calves at the back were off limits, and the few females in front weren't on her list. The male she had seen from the camp then appeared conveniently nearby. It was a case of being in the right place at the right time. Sue lifted her stand to mimic antlers, deceiving the prey into thinking a fellow deer was approaching. Surprisingly, this tactic worked, allowing her to get within 100 meters without the reindeer fleeing. Sue quickly set up her stand and aimed. Before the male could react, she fired. Unfortunately, she missed, but the deer did not flee, giving her a second chance. She fired again, and this time the deer fell. With winter meat secured, Sue drove over, thanked the deer for its sacrifice, which would allow her to enjoy delicious venison during the winter, and then inspected the deer to ensure it met hunting regulations. She also admired its antlers. If they were larger, they could be sold to collectors for nearly $10,000 as a mounted specimen. As they were, they could only be made into buttons or door handles. Sue wasn't concerned about the antlers' monetary value. She was more interested in the meat. This robust male could provide over 100 pounds of meat, enough to fill her freezer. She quickly butchered the deer and took it back to camp. The meat would be portioned and stored in the freezer. As for the deer's head, Sue planned to use it as a cabinet door handle. She placed the head on a table, needing only the antlers. She took a saw and cut them off at the base, trimming unnecessary forks to keep only the straighter parts. Antlers, being less dry and hard than bone, were relatively easy to saw through. She used all usable parts, attaching them to her kitchen cabinets. She drilled holes in the antlers and fixed them with screws, embodying what could be described as Alaska's most rustic decorating style. The remaining materials were processed similarly. The longer drawer pulls were made from the tips of the antlers. After installation, Sue tested them and found them very comfortable to use.